Oh, controller, that's something about checking the controller. Okay. There we go.
All right, welcome to the Natomas Charter School Board of Directors meeting for January of 2025. Happy New Year. I'll call this to order at 5:30. Roll call, Dr. Gaffney.
Here.
Justin Garrett.
Here.
Nita Kushal.
Here.
Sean King.
Here.
Gina Lee.
Here.
Arsenio Mataka.
Here.
Dr. Mayorado.
Here.
Preeti.
Here.
And Jennifer Morgan, I'm here. Student John Amir.
Here.
Marley.
Here.
It's Zach, right?
Yeah.
Ah, see? 2 months and I still remember. Reagan?
Here.
And Jordan?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome, guys. Let's start off with the student information updates for Early College Academy. John?
All right. Hello, everyone. Happy 2025. Happy New Year. This is my presentation for EC updates for the month of January and a little bit December. So from December 9th through the 13th, we had Change Wars. Change Wars is a week-long competition where each grade level tries to fill a jar with as many coins as possible for a specific charity, with array of rules for the competition between each grade level. So like if you add dollars, then it would sabotage the other teams and you will give your chance a better chance of winning. Seniors won, and we were able to raise as a school $282, which is really good. From December 16th through the 18th was finals week, where we wrapped up our fall semester studies. Staff hosted hot cocoa and apple cider. I got the apple cider. But outside of that, we had and from the 19th through January 3rd, was our break. January 6th was the beginning of our semester 2. So we're just getting back into the swing of things. As a senior, we're focusing on our senior projects a lot more heavily. All of us are starting getting our mentors for our mentor process. And like, for example, and it's different than last year, and it's a lot more community based, and it's a lot more leaving something better than how you found it. And I'm specifically working with NCS community, making its lunch system better. So there's that. There are a lot of things to look forward to this semester, such as like winter formal, college field trips, kindness week, multicultural month, prom, senior showcase, and of course, graduation. Thank you.
I have a quick question. No, it's okay. It's gonna be an easy question. The Change Wars.
Change Wars.
Did you carry the change to did you carry that big thing of change? Did you witness it?
I donated for sure.
You did, okay. So when it was all done and you had to take it to the sponsor's car, whatever, bank, did you carry that big?
No,
Okay, so fun story. My son carried it two years ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they dumped all the change out on the ground as they were carrying it to the car. No, not intentional.
I don't think you know that, but.
So I arrived to see him on the ground, sticking out quarters and dimes. So I'm glad that didn't happen.
It did not happen. We let the teachers handle the money.
Teachers handle the money.
It's probably, it's the Gary rule, that's why. All right, let's see, who's next? Leading Edge, Marley.
Good morning, our NCS board. You guys know my name's Marley. So, for January, what we've been doing, we had our Indian Bazaar. That was before our winter break. I wasn't necessarily there, but it was a really good turnout. We had also Asian culture combined this year, which is our first time doing that, and I loved all the arts and all the food that they brought. It was very nice, got lots of pictures. And then we had our big day of reading coming back. So big day of reading is basically where all 8th graders, they had a book cover in expressions class, and we got to get ours selected if it was good. And the ones that got selected were the books that people actually have read. So they had more meaning behind it, more knowledge instead of just random books people picked. So they came out really nicely. Hopefully you guys see them next board meeting. And then we had our rock, retouch, and rally to welcome back for the students, which we talked about our new phone policy, as you see the signs. We're doing pretty good with that, even though the kids are now using headphones a little bit more. But we're still working on that because during lunchtime, we have games like chess, checkers, and paddleball, which I hope is ping pong. And then we have that to provide more social activities, more social communal talks, more supportive language out during the blacktop and things of that nature so that everyone doesn't have to always be on their phone, looking down, falling, tripping. And we have basketball. Our basketball season starts this Thursday. We're playing at Paso Verde. And the girls go first, boys play second. We are really excited, and we hope that our girls team and our boys team to have a better season than we did last year. And also, we hope that we win the championships. Upcoming, we have our Parent University online safety that's hosted by Bill Kaiser for cybersecurity. He's a cybersecurity expert, and that is going to happen on Friday. And here we have our academics. iReady diagnostics are coming up at the end of the month. Math tutoring session 3 starts next week. All of the 7th and 8th graders have been signing up from our advanced classes and also the ones that are taking a chance on helping other students. And then we have our Learning Lab session 3 that started, and we have our progress reports coming out this Friday, January 17th. Thank you.
Thank you. PFAA, Zach.
Just so everyone knows, Zoom is now saying it's trying to reconnect. So carry on.
Okay, we returned to class January 6th. The Parent U Keeping Safe Online was the 15th. Cash for College FAFSA workshops for senior parents and students were the 16th. Student presentations for Staying Safe Online were the 17th. Students and staff have a day off for Martin Luther King on the 20th, and then students have a day off for Staff Development Day. And then the Resilience Dance Company performances are the 31st and the 1st. I was lucky enough to sit into one of the rehearsals. It's brilliant. Come support. And then I also forgot to mention, this Friday we have an assembly for Student of the Quarter for quarter number 2. Thank you.
All right, next up, Raven for PACT.
Hello, nice to see you again. Hope you all had a wonderful winter break. My name is Raven Young, and I'm the student representative for PACT Academy. On December 10th, PACT hosted Parent Coffee Talk with the topic, The Importance of Reading, followed by Executive Director Dr. Wood, who gave a presentation on NCS. On December 13th, PACT had the last day of workshops and Fun Friday math games with Miss Jessica. All grades were welcome. On December 20th, PACT hosted the Winter Reading Festival. Activities included reading to therapy dogs, games, delicious treats, and crafts. Let's get into our upcoming January events. On January 7th through 17th are the iReady diagnostics for all grades. On January 7th, 14th, and 28th are going to be special event pottery classes for grades 4 through 8. The pottery class will include hands-on art. The class will be making mugs. On January 14th will be Parent Coffee Talk on the topic, the role of assessment. And last but not least, on January 15th is the Sacramento City Hall field trip. PACT 2nd through 8th graders will be participating. The trip will include a tour of City Hall, a civics education, and a talk with Councilmember Talamantes. Thank you all for listening.
All right, and finally, Jordan. From Star Academy.
Hello, everybody. Hope you had a wonderful New Year's and Christmas, I hope. And To get started, my name is Jordan Mister. I'm a fifth grade at Star Academy, and I'm excited to share our school updates for January. First up, we had a vision and hearing testing for students at Star Academy in December. This is a great opportunity for students to check on their health. Also, Star Academy held a spirit week for students and staff the week before winter break. Some of the days we had were ugly sweaters, dress up like a movie character from your favorite Christmas movie, and pajama day. These days were spectacular. Next, first grade performed their holiday carols for classes. It was a cold day, but they warmed our hearts with their melodies. One of their songs they performed was Jingle Bells. Another important event we had was our PBI assembly in December. We had map-up performances for every grade level and pulled from our school-wide bin of Scholar Dolls for winners. We also had classroom winter celebrations in grade levels. In fifth grade, we watched movies and had gingerbread house making competitions. Okay, my team won. It was sweet like gumdrops. After returning from break, we also had our PBI's winter kickoff starting on January 6th. We learned about PBI's expectations and rules around the school. We made posters, made comics, and our last day, Miss Kelsey, a student counselor at our school, and parent volunteers surprised us with a candy treat. I loved it. Later this month, we had our Slide Park overnight food trip for the fifth graders in Mr. Labella's class. I am going on this trip, and I'm very excited. I will share all about my adventures when I return for my next update. Thank you for listening to my Star Academy update. I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's.
All right, thanks, everyone. Next up, hearing of the public for items on the closed session agenda.
Nothing received with me, no check online, no one online.
Okay, at this point, we will adjourn to closed session to consider and/or take action upon any of the following public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code 54954.2, Administrative Representatives, Executive Director Evaluation and Employment Committee Selection. Adjourn to closed session at 5:42.
Yes, it's you.
Okay, I can't just sit here, can't. All right. Everybody back? All right, I will reconvene open session at 6:21. No action taken during closed session. Tonight's agenda, may I have?
Actually, we do need to make record of the motion.
You're right, the one that didn't happen when I wasn't.
Let's not remind the audience.
Okay, we approved the committee for the executive director evaluation.
Great. And for the record, Dr. Gaffney made the motion, Gina made the second, and it was unanimous vote.
All right, thank you so much. Approval of agenda. Any comments, questions, additions, subtractions? Divisions or multiplications? Permutations? My dear Aunt Sally? All right, may I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Marrero. The second from Dr. Gaff. All right, roll call vote, Gina?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Jennifer, I'm a yes. Preeti? Yes. Nita? Yes. Arsenio?
Yes.
Okay. Moving along, tonight's consent items. Questions? All right, may I have a motion to approve tonight's consent items?
I motion to approve.
Thank you, Preeti. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Oh. Okay, he's conceding to you. Roll call vote, Arsenio?
Yes.
Nita? Yes. Preeti? Yes. Jennifer, I'm a yes. Maria?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
Gina? Okay. Action items, approval of 2023-24 financial. Wait, no.
You can do all three in a
Financial
row.
audit. Yeah, we have some coffee in the closed session.
We're ready to go.
I'm feeling like it wasn't decaf.
All right, you guys are ready, lots of questions, right?
Yep.
Well, another year is come and gone and closed out and good news for fiscal year 23-24 for our audit. So if you can go to the next one. Clifton Larson Ellen LLP is our audit firm. And so their spring review, it started in June of 2024. Normally, we have them coming in April and it's been pushed back. So that has been kind of a challenge because our admin staff is pretty much gone for the summer when they start asking for stuff. And then they close out in October of 2024. So just as a reminder, our audit is under the format of the Financial Accounting Standards Board, FASB. And our general ledger is based on generally a governmental accounting standard. So there's a reconciliation within the audit between the two. But the reason why we are under the Financial Accounting Standards Board is because of our nonprofit status. So see what's in the next one. So in your board packet is the complete report that we have here. And it includes our financial statements, the management letter, and our communication to the board. Next one. Okay, so for our financial statements, on page 4, you'll find a statement of financial position. So it's kind of like our balance sheet, and it was $45,137,863 for last year. Our statement of activities, which you can find on page 5, is our income statement, our profit and loss statement, with showing total net assets of $42,485,397. And then on page 7 is our statement of cash flows, where our cash and cash equivalents is over $25 million. So really good. That really almost matches or barely exceeds our fund balance and stuff too. So that's really good. What that means is we don't have a lot of outstanding receivables and stuff. So we actually have the cash on hand. That's a good thing. Always want to wonder about me if we have a lot of receivables and not a lot of money in the bank, okay? So next one on there. So other supplemental information. So regarding compliance statements on page 18 is the schedule of instructional time. We have to make sure that we're meeting the state minimum requirements for our students. And average daily attendance is listed on page 19. Our statement of revenues, expenditures, changes in fund balance, that's the governmental fund is on page 21 of the audit. And then that reconciliation that takes us from FASB to GASB is on page 20. I always have them put in the governmental fund statement so that they can, our district authorizers can clearly look at our general ledger and see that it matches to the reports and stuff. Next on here, so for compliance, so there were several compliance testing. This really takes up the bulk and makes up the majority of the cost of the audit. There's internal control testing, which is again selections, not they're not checking every single transaction. There's federal compliance and state compliance as well. So the internal control report you can find, it starts on page 27 and ends on page 28. For federal compliance, you have to receive over $750,000 from the federal government in order to kick in the testing. And so we're below that. We don't participate in a lot of federal funds. The main one that we get is for our special ed dollars that we have there. And then state compliance. So that starts on page 29 through 32 as well. And then I'll talk about their report out of that at the end. And then also what everyone is always focused on is schedule of findings. Was there any findings in the audit? And so that starts on page 33 and ends on 34. So they focus on current year and then the prior year if you had findings. So next one. So this year, happy to report no findings. That's on page 33. They do list on page 34 the prior year. So in 22-23, we had a clerical input error in the kindergarten ADA in the amount of 13.4. That was rectified. So they note in the audit that we have resolved that issue. There was nothing to adjust on our general ledger. It is annual attendance that doesn't drive our funding on there. So next slide for the summary. What is this? So on page 1 of the report is the actual audit's opinion. So they gave us an unmodified opinion. So what is that? Pretty much this is the best statement that you can get. In our opinion, financial statements referred to above present fairly and in all material aspects the financial opinion of the school ending June 30th, 2024, and changes in its net assets and its cash flows for the year ending in accordance with accounting principles. And so what this isn't is it's not an opinion. It doesn't include an opinion of our internal controls. But with that being said, it does give an opinion on our state compliance. So on that, their opinion is that our opinion, the school complied with all material aspects of the compliance requirements referred to above that are applicable for the school year ending June 30th, 2024. And then the last thing that the audit is it's not an opinion or a result of a fraud investigation. So, next slide. I do want to take a moment before answering questions and stuff to give a special shout out and thank you to my business office staff who worked really hard. Most of the team are going on their 3rd consistent year, knock on wood. We have one person that is entering her 6th year and staff with us, so that's great. But it is a team effort, school-wide effort for this whole audit report. So thank you to everybody.
I only, and again, it may not be relevant, but the listing of board members, did that have to reflect what's going on as of now?
No.
Okay, from last.
It's from last year.
Okay.
Yeah. It's and also because there's such a big gap in time from the time you close and stuff. But yeah. So we did have 4 changes.
All right, next.
I just have a question.
Quick question.
Is there ever a time where, because on that page 27, it says that, this is not an opinion of internal controls.
Right.
Do we ever have audits where we do get opinions on internal controls, or is this the is that like the Cadillac of audits or something? I'm trying to get
That's a good
understanding
question.
of when, at what point or where would you actually check for that?
So that would be an extra service that you would go through and purchase for that. So the requirement for school districts and charter schools as a public entity is reflected in the K-12 audit guide through the state controller's office, outline of what programs they really want to test. Part of that does include internal controls, because as they're testing for, say, educator effectiveness or attendance, they're looking at what procedures we have in place. And a lot of those you can find in the financial notes in the audit packet. So there's a big section on there that lists our procedures and some of the internal controls. But that would be an extra service if you wanted the auditors just to focus on internal controls.
And they do some interviews of like Anita and I, and usually Jen is the board chair, about our internal controls. So in a conceptual standpoint, but they're not sitting there looking at, every receivable and every transaction.
Right, no, yeah, I was just trying, you said that was kind of like as good as it gets from the statement, and I was just.
Yeah, because they want to make sure that they cover themselves too, that they have not looked at every single transaction. So like, for example, when they're testing accounts payable and we tell them, this is how we process accounts payable, it has to be, every requisition is signed off by our executive director. He sees everything, right? But when the invoice comes in, we make sure that it's received, someone's approved it for payment, things like that. So as they pull expenditures, they're looking for, do I have all these approvals? Is the requisition in there? Things like that.
So when we give the, whatever we got, right, the highest level you mentioned,
Yeah.
and there's no findings, does that speak to pretty solid internal controls, or are they unrelated?
Well, for the most part, they did test those with what their samples were and stuff too, so,
Okay.
yeah.
And usually you don't do I think what our city is referring to, you do that when you have problems.
Yeah.
When you're like, things aren't balancing out here, right? Because you can't, while this is not necessarily an audit of our internal controls, you can't get this type of statement without having strong internal controls.
Yeah.
And so, and like Anita's saying, they're sampling, so they're kind of looking at your internal controls. But yeah, if we ever had concerns or we felt like, things were off somehow, that's where we would conduct a deeper audit. We should also just kind of, as charter school governing team, also recognize that there's actually a bill pending in the legislature right now about actually tightening the audit process for charter schools. Because there have been some charter schools, especially independent study charter schools, that have made some poor choices with their funds and have not been as transparent with their findings and their accounting as we are. And so there's been a whole analysis and audit of the auditing process that's kind of leading to some potentially more legislative actions. Based on the way that bill is currently drafted, it wouldn't be huge changes for Natomas Charter School because we kind of operate from an audit standpoint in a really transparent and high quality way. But for instance, right now, charter schools that are part of school districts don't actually have to do an independent audit. They're just sort of within the district audit and stuff. And so those are some of the things that we're looking at.
My question was more about just thinking long-term about whether or not at some point is there a cycle by which you do it, even not waiting for the problem. Like every 5 years, something like that, some sort of reassurance as, the board that, okay, even though there's no smoke here,
Yeah.
we've done our due diligence.
Yeah.
That's all. That's why I was kind of thinking with it. But thank you.
Yeah,
That helps. That
I
helps.
suspect that new legislation is going to
I'm not
provide
sure,
us
right?
guidance on
Yeah.
based on what I've seen.
What Joe mentioned about the dependent charter schools within the school district's financials and stuff, because we used to be there before we were completely independent. And then back then, sometimes you're on a rotation cycle so Natomas Unified, because they have so many schools, they'll only pick 5 schools that year to test. And so, but with the charter schools, they always made sure that we were on the list, especially our site-based ones. So back then, we went through 2 audits at that time because we're part of the district, would send their auditors over and then with us. So now we're completely independent.
Wow. Anything else? All right, may I have a motion to approve the 2023-24 financial audit?
I'll move.
Thank you, Arsenio. May I have a second? Thank you, Justin. Roll call vote, Jean.
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Doug.
Yeah.
Maria.
Yes.
Jennifer, I'm a yes. Preeti. Yes. Nita.
Yes.
Arsenio.
Yes.
Okay. Moving along, don't go anywhere. Disaster recovery plan.
Yes, okay. So, Jacob Underwood apologized if he needed to do something with his daughter tonight, so he couldn't be here tonight, but, he and I both worked on, our disaster recovery plan that we're bringing to you tonight. So this is a follow-up based on, we originally, brought our cyber, incident report plan back in February of 2024. And then, we also got approval in August of 2024, earlier this year. So tonight we are asking for approval for our disaster recovery. This is the second of 3 plans that are required for our cyber insurance. Go to the next one. Okay, so tonight we're talking about disaster recovery plan, DRP. So what is it? This plan captures information. Let's see, are you on the right? Yeah, plan captures information that describes our ability to withstand a disaster and the processes we would need to do to achieve disaster recovery. So a disaster can be caused by humans or nature, and as a result, the organization would not be able to perform all or some of their duties and responsibilities within a certain period of time. So some examples would be fire, flood, earthquake, and other natural disasters, a major cyber incident, extended power outage, and theft and vandalism of equipment, as well as, going to the next one, it could be an active shooter or hostage situation, or a major system failure that has significant impact on our organization's ability to function for an extended period of time. So, up in there, our friends in LA County, part of our JPA and stuff too, our JPA attorneys are all busy trying to help them with this is initiating as that. As of today, our families were notified and staff were notified about a cyber incident that happened with one of our vendors, PowerSchool, based on a third-party connection they had. So this gives us the opportunity to actually use these plans in place and stuff. So I know the board has been briefed on that as well. But we are required to go through the same process, even though it wasn't our data breach. Notified staff, making the families, and then also keep them updated on the news that we get from there. So the purpose and the scope, that in the event of a disaster, the number one priority basically is preventing loss of life. So that's going to be, we're going to focus on our students and staff first, and then the next goal would be to enact the steps outlined in our disaster recovery plan and bring our NCS groups and departments back to business as usual. And so that goal too is preventing loss from NCS resources such as data or physical IT assets, minimizing our downtime, and being able to keep up on business operations on there. So the following areas are things that we're considering in this plan that are outlined: network infrastructure, service infrastructure, data storage and backups, data center physical security, end user computers, database systems, IT documentation. So within the plan, you can see that there's a bunch of different areas. There is a lead for each area, and because we are so small, you'll see that our IT team, our real heroes here, are involved in all the steps pretty much on the way. But they also are connected with liaisons from our vendors that we do use to make sure that they can do their back end stuff on that. So going to the next one, here's our heroes again, Debbie, and you got to meet them back in August or so. So going to the next slide here. This is in the nutshell, the plan that we have here. It all starts off with our executive director. He is our public information officer at the time. But basically, Joe's considered the lead and everything, as well as our disaster management team is made up of directors, principals, and managers. But what I wanted to direct you to is the yellow portion, and then these are shades of dark blue and black here, the IT team. That is really the core of where the work is going to and stuff. First, starting with Francisco and Jacob, so IT manager and facilities and maintenance manager, they really need to assess and lock down, shut off, and contain anything that may happen. And then we have a network team, a server team, and an applications team. So it's only 3 people in the department. They are working together, and they'll be working back and forth on all 3 of those areas at the same time, working on that. And then lastly, we have a business services team and a finance team. Again, we're only 7 members and stuff, so we would be working with our SCOE liaison in both of those areas, kind of working in business and finance transactions as we go through that process right there. And then with anything for the recovery plan, as you go through, you may go through this multiple times. So you think you contain it, and then you discover something else, and you have to go back, and you start it again. And so that is pretty much it on here. I'll open it up for questions. Oh, sorry, I skipped the slide. Okay, on here. So tonight, hopefully, you will be approving the disaster recovery plan. The last one that would be coming to you after this is called the business continuity plan for school operations. And so what our next steps are, once we have those in place, we are going to be reviewing all of our plans, training our cyber incident communications team, practicing our plan using tabletop exercises. We have this recent incident that we will go through as well, updating our system protocols, and then working with our Schools Insurance Authority Cyber Advisory Group for professional development as well. So Jacob and I plan to, once we have this recent incident documented, we plan to send it to Schools Insurance Authority, have their team review it, edit, did we miss anything or anything like that? And so it kind of gives us some real life application and process. But our plan for the later in the spring is to start the training our communications team, going through our emergency phone tree and doing tabletop exercises after this.
Questions, comments?
Anybody have a question?
One little context I want to provide the board too is that the work that we're looking at here, this is largely around school operations, right? Like if we have a cybersecurity incident or student information system gets breached. Next month, Petra is going to actually be presenting the comprehensive school safety plan. And one new component in the comprehensive school safety plan is that we have to have a learning continuity plan for students. So the cyber response plan that Anita's looking at is really around school operations and like what happens if we have something that's significantly disrupting our technology, which could be a fire, flood, something like that. And then what Petra is going to be presenting next month will be talking. I want to be clear, it's generalized, right? Because every disaster is kind of different, but generally, like if we found ourselves in a situation where a levee was breached, let's say, and we couldn't operate school in an in-person sense for a month or something, what would be kind of the general steps that we would go through in order to continue to support students? So the two kind of go hand in hand.
All right. Ready for vote? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the disaster recovery plan? Second. Gina, roll call vote. Gina? Yes. Justin?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Maria? Yes. Jennifer, I mean, yes. Preeti? Yes. Nita? Yes. Arsenio?
Yes.
Okay, moving along.
One more thing.
Oh, yeah, one more. Alliant, approval of Alliant Insurance Services Incorporated contract.
So tonight I wanted to provide you with an employee benefit update that relates to why we're bringing this contract to the board for an independent medical insurance board. So kind of where we are at. The last time we did a board presentation was when we switched to Charter Life, which was back in 2017 or so. And then prior to that, actually it was further back than that, 2014, I think is when we went on with that. So it's been a while here on that. So what I wanted to go over is what are our current employee benefits that we provide as a school and as an employer. Our Health and Welfare Committee and the Independent Medical Insurance Program. So if you can, so starting with vision and dental, Schools Insurance Authority is has multiple JPAs, Joint Power Associations that have different types of insurance. So we belong to the dental insurance JPA, the vision insurance JPA, and also with that, they also provide us with employee assistance program through Optimum. With Schools Insurance Authority, there are other insurances that we are participate in, which is workers' compensation as well as too. I'm a member at large. Each school member has a board member on there as well, and serve on their committees as well. But in doing a poll with our staff and kind of looking at as things kind of were brought to our attention on the medical side and stuff too, we're kind of looking at all of our insurances and stuff too. And overwhelmingly, our staff is very satisfied with the plans that we have through Schools Insurance Authority and the pricing and things like that. Many years they have flat rates, they haven't increased. We've seen years where they decrease as well and stuff too. So, so we're pretty happy with that. I'm going here. Okay, so Charter Life Trust, that's currently where we get our medical insurance. And with that came a insurance broker, the Dickerson Group. So they're kind of hand in hand when we join this group as well. So we currently have Anthem Blue Cross for medical and then Kaiser Permanente as well. They do provide an employee assistance program through Health Advocate as well. Most of our staff are using the EPA or Employee Assistance Program through Optum. We see the most on that piece as well. So if you go to the next slide here. Okay, so we've had some challenges currently with our medical coverage as well. And this has been going on for quite a few years or so. Each year regarding untimely renewal information. Historically, because we are a school, we're on the plan year January through December. Most of the time, we would have open enrollment in October. Also, the reason why we have it in October is because November, December are very short months for processing payroll. The county's holiday schedule, they pretty much cut us off at mid-month for each of those months because of the holidays and stuff. So gathering the information, we clearly communicated to Charter Life that we needed renewal by October, as well as all their other school clients on there. So each year we've been seeing later and later. It came to a tipping point last year when we got it, our staff had only like 2 days to complete their open enrollment, make decisions. We got it in December as well. So this year wasn't that much better at the end of November, and they had to turn it in the beginning of December. Also, untimely plan changes. So also they've made changes where right when we're getting renewal rates, it's like, oh, by the way, we're going self-insured in Anthem Blue Cross. And, you know, and it's hard to explain to your staff with little information on, okay, we're going from an HMO to a self-insured plan and things like that through the trust. Escalating premium costs. Now that is something that is nationwide. So basically I can't say that that is the fault of the trust or so on there. We, as the trust, we are one of over 1,000 members and stuff too. So with, as a large trust, that can be good, can be bad and stuff, but you spread the risk. And then also during this process, we found out our current broker has limitations and stuff too. So as they would tell us, their hands are kind of tied on what information they could provide us because they work directly with the trust. But in this whole process, we've learned a lot. And so brokers, they would have renewal information by August, September. if you belong to a trust, it's given to the trust. It's up to the trust to add their admin fees, things like that. And so that's where the kind of the bottleneck for our release would happen, is that the trust was making decisions and holding on to things on that. And then also the lack of customer service, the ghosting of, when we're trying to contact them, getting answers and things like that. So, going to the next slide right here. So, last year, after all of that disaster and stuff, really early spring, I decided we need to take action on here too. So we formed a health and welfare committee, asked staff who would like to join and participate as well. And you can't see it on this slide, but if you go to using your Natomas Charter School credentials, log in and go to our intranet under Human Resources and pull down menu, there is Health and Welfare Committee. You can see the members there. You can see our agendas, our packets, things like that, if you want to keep up on the progress on that piece and stuff too. So, so in the spring, we formed the committee and we started discussing our challenges and what we wanted to do. And we decided that we wanted to look for an independent broker that works strictly for us. Now, a lot of the committee members are actually, I want to say, almost every committee member is very satisfied with the plans and coverage that we are getting with Charter Life for the most part. But they are concerned that with the untimely information that they get, say their spouse is on the same renewal plan year. They can't make those decisions and find out, or decide, I think I'm going to waive and go to the exchange, California Exchange. So it doesn't really provide them with a lot of information. So doing that decision, we decided to go out for a request for qualifications. As a charter school, we don't have to go out for a formal bid process. We can select qualifications. There was about 7 brokers that applied. And then we selected the top 3 brokers that we wanted to interview and stuff. So with the committee, I want to thank the committee. They put in a lot of work. When I first talked to them, I told them it was going to be a lot of work. They had to really, because they vetted, Ziva was one of the members as well too. They had to vet all the proposals and stuff and sort through all the fluff, you would say, of what they can do. And it really comes down to what services they will provide for us, because for the most part, the cost is pretty much the same. It's either commission, things like that. So, and through that process, we selected Alliant Insurance Company. And so, if you were to approve the contract tonight, we plan to work with Alliant Insurance Services starting this month. One of the major purposes too that we have done is we want them to educate our Health and Welfare Committee. I want them to be the liaisons to our staff too, because coworkers talk to each other, and if we educate them on the different varieties of what is out there, it will help get the word out as well. But the brokers should be able to let us know and educate us on the different types. Right now we have fully insured plans. There's self-insured plans, there's semi-self. There's high deductibles with health savings accounts, things like that, to make sure that they know of all the different varieties before we give them direction on where to go to look for us. One of the standard things is they'll go out to market for us in general, and that is just sending something out there. Hey, we're looking for medical insurance, and then the providers, if they want to, will submit something. Another thing too is they could approach other JPAs, trusts, or the providers directly as well, because we already have a relationship with Anthem, Blue Cross, and Kaiser. So they will bring us back all of that. They have a transition timeline that they feel that they can give us good information to make a decision by August, early September of 2025. That way we could bring something to the board at that time if we decided to make a shift. They could also decide and keep us with Charter Life. It's just that we would have that separate broker. Now, the Health and Welfare Committee would be working with Alliant on the different options brought to us, but the Health and Welfare Committee is advisory only. So that we advised, Joe on that as executive director of any proposed changes that we would like to make at that time on there. And then the goal would be that we would, have, medical coverage by October 2025 on time for our 2026 plan year. So with Alliant, how we do this, their fee is about $1,800 a month for between now and June 30th. Coming the next plan, and now through December 25th. The next plan year, if we were to go with them, they get paid on commission and stuff too. So right now we are with Charter Life through the plan year 2025, which ends December 2025. Yeah. So also I wanted to share with you our committee members. So as you can see, some of my HR team, there, Ziba was here, Miss Kaler in the back. And you can see kindergarten teachers, we have PE teacher, social studies teacher, an admin assistant, and English teacher as well on there. And as we move forward, we will be inviting everybody, if they'd like to participate, to come. But these are the core people that really went through this whole process and helped us come up with the selection of Alliant Insurance Services.
So it looks like it's a 3-year initial term. Is that kind of a standard period of time?
Yeah, that's because we can cancel if we want to out of that, but they'd like to see a commitment for us so that they can really make a difference in going through that.
To that point, what do you mean make a difference?
So be able to go out and shop and show that they have been able to find us a solution that has worked for us better, and make sure that they're educating our staff members so that we could decide, do you want to stay fully insured? What are the other options out there? So that's, yeah.
So we don't know what kind of rates they're gonna bring us?
They're a broker, so they go out shopping for us. How they get paid is pretty much the fees, general operation is about 4% commission that they add onto the rates or so. So they get paid through the premiums.
And is that consistent with what our previous, I know we weren't happy with their services.
Right, it's pretty,
That's
yes, it is, it's consistent.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and guess that this might not net save us money, but it will help us find a better provider.
Okay.
Because when we look at our health insurance rates and we compare them with what other organizations of similar sizes are paying around us, there's not huge differences,
Right.
you know, some a little higher, some are a little lower. I think our frustration as Anita was saying is that what I was hearing from all the employees is, yeah, all the rates are going, the rates are all expensive, like they're expensive for everyone, we sort of understand that. But we're generally happy with the product that we're getting. It's just the open enrollment period is a complete disaster. Like Anita mentioned, last year was 2 days, this year was 2 weeks. You know, and I mean, I'm emailing them daily, like, where are our rates, where are our rates, and we're like having to, I mean, we had everything done with SIA, like almost a month before we got the rates from Charter Life. And then not only can employees not make decisions, but it means that the business office is like trying to process this stuff as fast as they humanly can. Mistakes are getting made because they don't have time to really look through the records and stuff, right? And so we want to provide better service. And then also the other part too is, was it 2 years ago when they went self-insured for the Anthem Blue Cross people lost out on services, you know, especially women that were navigating like fertility treatments and different things like that. And so part of it too, for the Kaiser people, it wasn't a big change. Like our insurance all kind of stayed the same because they weren't becoming self-insured for that. But for the Anthem Blue Cross people, it was a huge change. And what was frustrating is, like Anita said, they told us like, you know, a week or two before they were making the change. There wasn't a whole lot we could do about it. And you're trying to educate the employees. And we were even finding that like the doctors weren't understanding it. So people that had had a doctor forever were being declined, saying that, you know, we don't take this insurance anymore when they actually did. So I mean, it just, the customer service from Charter Life has been extremely lacking. And so that's why we're kind of going through this process.
Yeah, and just for clarity, so are we only moving the medical and the EAP?
We're only medical. EAP is through Schools Insurance Authority, which is part of the JPAs for,
Okay, so we're not
provisions.
using because I thought there were,
Oh, sorry,
They
yes,
provide a
do.
second EAP,
They
but
provide
that's
a
not.
second
that's going
one,
away.
so
Yeah.
that'll go away if we leave charter license.
The intention is really on the medical insurance.
And then the new medical providers and stuff, they may offer another employee assistance program as a second option for that.
and you said that it's 3 years because they want time to realize the overall benefits, but is there any early term fee for us?
Yes, I believe so, Joe, can you do there and see?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I believe it's, the standard usually is like a 90-day prior to the end of a plan year.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, 90 days.
Yeah, but this whole process, as you can see, going through an RFP process, vetting and stuff, you don't really, you can't really make a change overnight.
Sure.
And what I told the Health and Welfare Committee is that back in the spring of last year is that this is gonna be a 1.5-year process that we're going through and stuff. So,
And there isn't a specific termination fee, we just pay through that time period. So like if we were to terminate after 1 year, then we would make sure that we paid the full year. But our intention, unless
But we wouldn't be paying that after,
no, because then it becomes part of the commission, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we just probably have to give them 90 days notice. and-
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And but it means we're like finding health insurance.
Right.
sort of stuff. So I mean, so the intention would be to stay with the broker and resolve
Right.
problems if they
Right.
come up along the way.
right, since right now, we made this commitment that we would pay them the $1,800 fee because we already have a broker in place that's getting paid by commission already in plan year 2025. So you have to do some work up front
It's like a
in order to
consultancy
make,
fee.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What stood out from Alliant versus the other two ones that were interviewed?
That's a good question. So they really came in and were really, they appeared to be very invested in the school, knew about the school. Also, full disclosure, the person in charge of that actually used to work at the Dickerson Group too, so she knew a lot of history of our school. It was like, and so the services that they provided in the RFQ were a lot more support in there. I'm gonna also see, Amy, do you have in mind anything that stuck out for you for Alliant? Some of the other brokers that we interviewed on that day didn't really, seemed like they were going through the process of a presentation, right?
And that's what you noticed in the
yes.
stuff that we received too, that we got, that we had to go through. There was a lot, and it was kind of a competition of who has the best HR marketing department, and you had to really go through that to see like, what are the actual quality things that you can, are tangible. But they were the ones that kind of followed through, cared more. They definitely stood out. There's one other one that I would say I thought was very close. But they stood out more as they cared about us for who we are and not just, oh, here's another person who can give us some money or that we could just use, or some of them, one of them in particular, it's like, oh, they're small, we don't really care that much. So you could see that too, and even in the original 7 or 9 that we had, there were some that really did care that you would go through, and it's like, you have like 3 pages of stuff where other people have 30, 40 pages, and you could see they didn't even spend the time.
And there was like a prescribed document, questions that they had to answer, so you could really tell between who took their time to really investigate and put effort into it versus who was just like rubber stamp, oh, this is just another proposal we're submitting, it could have been plug and play kind of vibes, you know? And so that was really nice, and they were very thorough in their presentation.
And we got some not recommendations, we did reference checks.
Yes, they had
And their
reference checks.
references
That's right.
were also very strong.
That's
great.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
I just like the idea that you put the staff together, the committee together
Yeah.
to help in this process.
Some of the districts I've worked at before and stuff too, I always had a health and welfare committee, and the broker was a large part of that and stuff too, because again, annual renewal, that's a big thing and stuff, but it doesn't take up the whole year. And we really focused on educating our employees what the industry trends are, things like that and stuff too. And so it's really helpful.
And I want to thank Anita for that as well, just putting the whole staff together. I thought that was really meaningful and she really led that effort very well. So thank you, Anita.
All right, may I have a motion to approve Alliant Insurance Services contract?
So moved.
A second. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Maria. Roll call vote. Arsenio?
Yes.
Nita?
Yeah.
Vicky? Yes. Jennifer, I'm a yes. Maria?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
Gina? Yes. All right, next up, Amy.
All right, so this is the second read for the 504 updated policy. And really, the only changes, you'll see them in red. We updated to say, is it calendar days or school days? And those align with what IEPs are too. So it'll make it much easier. And then we updated the email address to be more generic in the sense of special education director. So if I weren't in that spot, it would still go to the right person. But those are overall. I did notice on one, it has a line where it says one and rechecked it. Anyways, you'll turn it into black if approved. So it's just literally dates and then the email address going through. Were there any other questions on it? Otherwise, it stayed the same. All right.
All right, may I have a motion to, whoa, I did something weird, hold on. Okay, may I have a motion to approve our second reading and adoption of board policy 6164.6?
So, I'll second.
Thank you, Maria, thank you. Nita, you have that, you, okay. Roll call vote, Arsenio?
Yes.
Nita? Yes. Preeti? Yes. Jennifer, yes. Maria?
Yes.
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Gina? Yes. Okay. All right, Dr. Wood, enrollment report.
So the next two items, they're exciting because they involve spreadsheets and data. That's my favorite thing. All right, so the first thing we're talking about is our enrollment report. So we're looking at our enrollment basically after the first of the year, so at the beginning of a new semester. So I also pulled data as of today because, we're constantly students leaving, students coming in, that sort of thing. So just like in the enrollment report, Leading Edge is sitting at 265. PACTIS actually has 4 more students. They're actually at 118 instead of 114. PFA is at 758, STAR still at 600, and ECA is at 116. So, continuing bringing in students. We will continue to enroll students until basically about mid-March, kind of when we hit the end of the third quarter, because then we get to a point where it's actually it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we'll have students kind of wait until the coming school year. Related to this, applications for next school year closed on Friday. So this morning, looking at the counts, we actually brought in 1,593 applications, so just under 1,600. That was about 250 more than last year. And about our average for the last 8 years has been about 1,434, so about 150 or so more. We definitely saw increases in kindergarten, 6th and 9th. We also saw some increases in the other grade levels too. And then we saw PACT actually has currently double the applications for next year than they did this time last year. So last year they got 21, I think they're at 42 right now. And then ECA is actually sitting at 51 applications compared to 44. So, and for our independent study programs, it's actually kind of rare to get a whole lot of applications right now because typically we don't have lotteries for either of those academies. So applications are looking pretty good. So we'll continue, bringing them in. And then the lottery itself is at the end of this month on January 20th.
All right, 2024-25 compensation study.
Yeah, so I'm gonna actually stay here. I'm not gonna go up to the podium just because there's some different pieces here. So first I'm actually gonna walk through some slides that you have, but you also wanna look for this handy dandy, very big spreadsheet that you have. It's like my favorite spreadsheet of the year. So yeah, we are going to be talking about our compensation study. So just as a reminder, this is really directly connected to some of our highest priority organizational goals. So it's literally our number 1 goal in our strategic plan is about attracting and retaining employees. It is LCAP goal number 4, but I would even argue it ties to the other LCAP goals that we have because if we can't attract and retain employees, then it's impossible to do the other things. So let's go to the next slide. So salary and benefits actually makes up the most significant part of our budget. And so, part of why we spend so much time, I gotta get my notes here. part of why we spend so much time looking at our compensation study is salary and benefits represent 80% of our budget as of adopted budget. And depends on the year and whether or not we have a facilities project going on, but typically we run between 75 and 85% of our budget is salary and benefits. Certificate salaries themselves are about 43% of our budget, classified salaries are 13% of our budget, and employee benefits. I think this is one of those things that people just kind of take for granted, but it represents a quarter of our budget. So when we're thinking about health and welfare benefits along with the contributions that we have to make as an employer for STRS and PERS, it's a significant amount of money. So let's go to the next slide. And what we're able to do in terms of health and welfare benefits is completely driven by the funding that we bring in. And in California, because we have the local control and accountability funding formula, funding is largely based on student enrollment, right? So we get a base rate of money, that's the same base rate of money that everyone gets for every student. And then you get different add-ons that are based on basically if you have kids that are English learners or foster youth or qualify for free and reduced lunch. So part of why I'm putting this data up here is when we're looking at school organizations within the immediate Natomas area, so the three charter schools, so us, MP3, Westlake, and the 2 districts, Natomas Unified and Twin Rivers, we actually get the least amount of per pupil funding. So you look where that red bar is sitting at about, just about $11,000, almost $12,000 compared to Twin Rivers, which is over $15,000. And there's actually about a 25% difference between us as the lowest per pupil funded organization and Twin Rivers. So when people, and we're going to look at data here in a second, you'll see Twin Rivers does pay higher than Natomas Charter School. Of course they do. They're receiving 25% more funding per student than Natomas Charter School. And so as we'll dig into our data here in a second, but in terms of an average to our comparisons, we receive about 9% less in funding than most of the organizations that we're comparing ourselves to. And that's completely based on demographics. Our unduplicated count population in the most recent data that we have here is around 32, 33%. It actually is going up a little bit because of this year's numbers, but that's not official yet. But we're sitting at that 32% number, whereas Twin Rivers is sitting at 95%. So, and the way that the funding works is you get a base amount of money for every kid. And then for any student who meets that unduplicated count difference, you get an extra 20% on top of that. And then if your unduplicated count population is over, I always have to check the numbers here, is over 55%, for every kid over 55%, you get an additional 65% on top of that. So it's, and it's rightfully so. I mean, the intention here with the funding is that kids who have the highest needs and those organizations should receive the most funding. The intention behind that is that those organizations are hopefully providing things like counselors, social workers, mental health support. That doesn't always what actually is happening though. It's often ending up in salary and benefits as a whole for all of the staff members. So it's just important, I think, for us to understand that this is the most significant investment that we make in our organization every year as a governance team. And it's also largely driven by the funds that we're able to bring in. Go to the next slide. So just before we jump into the spreadsheets, kind of a little history on compensation study and structure. So we started this when I took over as executive director. So I think this is our 6th year doing this. And Ziba is actually the one who does a lot of this. So she's kind of all the brawn and muscle putting everything together here. So what we're doing here is we're going to look at our numbers compared to other school districts in the region. And we're basically looking at districts that either we've brought in staff from, or we know that staff have gone to. Kind of these are sort of our comparables. We also will compare ourselves to charter schools as we look in the data, because charter schools and districts are slightly different than each other. And then here in Natomas, because that's our direct competitors. And then in terms of position focus areas, we have a lot of different positions in our organization, and not every organization has the same types of positions. So we kind of look for positions where we can do a good apples to apples comparison. Like everyone has teachers, everyone has principals, everyone has administrative assistants. So those are kind of the ones that we tend to focus in on. But we have certificate staff, administrative staff, some classified hourly positions. And then just in terms of history, like I said, we've been doing this for about 6 years. And then we've added things along the way. So like in 2021, we added per pupil funding, which we'll look at in just a second. Last year, we added the counselors, and then this year we actually added custodial staff. So we continue to improve upon it as we go over it. So with that, we're actually gonna go look at the spreadsheets now. So in front of you, you have this big handy dandy spreadsheet. And so I'm gonna kind of just talk through the organizational structure of the spreadsheet, especially for those of you that are new to our board this year. And then kind of talk about the summary data at the bottom, which is the most important. So as we're looking at this first sheet in the packet, this is our general education certificated staff. So these are our teachers, our counselors, our school administrators. As you're looking through this data, any of the numbers that are black, that data is new this year. Any of the data that's red, that was the same as last year. So just, sort of looking at this first sheet, you can see that pretty much every organization had changes in their salary schedules this year. That's all the black text. And the red text are the people who actually were using the same salary schedule as the year before. If we kind of look at the green column, so this is where that per pupil funding comes in. And so you can see we have like the name of the organization, whether it's a district or charter school, their enrollment as of last school year, their unduplicated count percentage. So that's the percentage of students that are foster youth, English learners or free or reduced lunch. And then that kind of works out to what is their funding per student. And then we have the teacher, we have a breakdown of teacher beginning, teacher middle, teacher end, same sort of thing for counselors, similar structure for principal. One thing that we do a little bit different for principal is we actually calculate an average daily rate, because while teachers tend to work the same number of days kind of in most organizations, maybe give or take a day or two, principals are a little all over the map. In some organizations, they work 200 days. In other organizations, they might work up to 220 or 230 days. So that's kind of why we have that breakdown there as well. So what's always kind of, I think, the most important to me is really looking at those three smaller tables that are down at the bottom. So you see the first table, it says overall analysis. This is our data compared to all of the organizations on this particular sheet. So if you look at that LCFF per enrollment funding, you can see that we're negative 8.95%. That means that our funding on average is 8.95% below the comparables. And then as you kind of work your way across, those numbers that are on that same row are that part of the salary schedule compared to everyone. So you see, compared to everyone, our teacher salary is 3.6 below average, mid was 4.81 below average, teacher high was 5.82 below average. Counselors, you can see these are largely all positive numbers. So our counselors is almost 14% above average to start, 5% above average at the middle, kind of 7% below average at the end. Principals, we have the negative 10, the negative 13.93, negative 15.28, and then moving across, you have the average daily rate. So that first table there is overall analysis. The next table down is just looking at the charter schools that are in our comparisons. And then the third table at the bottom is really looking at Natomas Unified, or sorry, I shouldn't Natomas Unified, but Natomas area organizations. So Natomas Unified, NP3, Westlake, and Natomas Charter all put in together. So as you look across these, what you can, I think it's always important to, at one point, like you might look at the salary numbers and go, okay, how do we get those up to zero, or even positive numbers be even better, right? But that always kind of has to be calibrated with that funding number that's over to the left. I mean, yes, if we receive the same amount of funding as everyone else, then certainly let's get our numbers closer. But that's always kind of a little bit of struggle. So if we kind of look through this data, what this kind of tells us is that right now we're doing a comp study that's telling us kind of what our needs are. We don't yet know what the state budget is going to look like. And honestly, like we've got some preliminary information about the state budget on Friday, but there's been these massive fires in Southern California that are going to disrupt the state budget. And so, right now we don't know what we could offer in terms of additional compensation next year. And we intentionally do the comp study right now when we don't know that, because we want to look at our needs kind of with that idea of like, okay, depending on how the money sort of pencils out in the budget, what could we potentially shoot for, right? So as I kind of look across here, I think depending on how the money sort of pencils out, what we probably want to try to shoot for each of these certificated positions, or I should say for the teachers and the counselors, is something in the 2 to 5% range, right, in terms of a potential increase for next year. And maybe for administrators, which are the principals here, looking at 5 to 10%. Because as we look across this data, we can see we're off a little bit for teachers. We're off a little bit about the same for counselors, especially compared here in Natomas, but we're more off on the side of principals, right? So that might be kind of some things that we're looking at there. Questions about this general education sheet before I move on to the next sheet, which is special education?
At the lowest, so in the beginning number for teachers, and I guess anyway, how often do we bring someone in at that level, or do we have other?
Very often, actually.
Yeah.
Because that's basically pretty standard. I'm a brand new teacher. I just got my teaching credential. If someone, maybe had some prior teaching experience, maybe they were a private preschool teacher or something like that, we might have them come in a couple steps higher. But for certificated salary schedules, we tend to use all of the cells. Whereas sometimes with hourly classified, you might, start them on year 3 to be competitive with the fast food industry or something like that. Literally,
Don't get me
that's
started,
the thing I
please.
had to do today.
Okay, so you mentioned fast food, you ruined my train of thought.
Sorry.
And not because I'm hungry. 'Cause shoot, where was I going?
You said teacher, the first cell.
Yeah, oh, yes, so we in recent years have struggled finding staff, and that's not unique to us.
Yeah.
But that said, how often is salary an argument for not joining us? Do we have that data?
We don't in a objective way, but in a more like what's the word I'm looking for, like a anecdotal way. As the person who does all the offers,
Yeah,
that's usually not our stumbling block.
Okay.
Usually that could be a stumbling block for retention. So one of the things that we were definitely hearing when we go back to the spreadsheets, we're gonna look at some historical trends, but for those of you that are relatively new to the board, we've made some significant investments in our salary schedule over the last couple of years. Last year, we did a really significant one with the teachers, and that actually helped us retain a lot of folks. Because there were people that were saying like, I love Natomas Charter School, I wanna be here forever, but like rent is $3,000 a month and I'm trying to figure this out, right? And so some of them were starting to go, okay, well, I can make a lot more money in Twin Rivers. They knew that there was a trade-off there, maybe in terms of like, quality of life or the type of work that they were gonna be having to do. But money, I find, money helps keep people in more than necessarily opens the door, if that makes sense.
okay, thank you.
Okay. So,
That mid-year, a teacher that's mid, how many years is that?
probably they're around year 12 to 13. Yeah. And that's the other part that's a little tough about, so every organization's salary schedule is structured slightly different, but you think a teacher, most salary schedules usually between year 1, so it's usually a series of years and columns, right? So, but if you just look at years, usually it's a 1 to 25 or a 1 to 30 type structure. So for us, we actually have 30 steps. So for us, a mid is officially 15, but we actually have, like, in our salary schedule, all the steps have increases pretty significantly, and then when you get to year 15 is where then you like freeze for 5 years and then you go up a step and increase.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
Why, is that a common thread in education, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, for CalSTRS retirees, in order to retire, you usually have to be at least 55 or have 30 years of service.
Right.
So, it's kind of driven by that, yeah. All right, so I'm gonna move to the next page here.
Question.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Natomas, 3, I know you said there was differences in funding, but you mentioned the need to plus up the principals a little bit more. You're thinking like up to 10%.
Yeah.
So how did we, because I'm looking at that band and I can see that the principal band is relatively, like there's big gaps, 30,000 in some cases, like gaps between MP3. And so, like, how do we, I don't know the history between the two schools, like funding, but like, is that just like, do they have like, it looks like, I'm looking at it, let me see. What I'm trying to get a sense of is like, I see what you're adjusting, proposing maybe that we want to look at principles, but how do we end up there with that like low band on the principles? It just seems it's a small band too.
Yeah. It's kind of two things. So first of all, NP3 has a long-standing practice of always just taking the Natomas Unified salary schedule and adding 5% on top of it. So what happens here in Natomas is, within Natomas Unified, there's union, right? So it's collective bargaining that drives their salary schedule. And then NP3 would just say, okay, we're gonna take whatever that dollar amount is and basically add 5% on top of it. That's kind of how they've ended up with their numbers. Now, what MP3 does that's slightly different than Natomas Unified is Natomas Unified has steps. So like for every year you're in your system, you get like a 2% bump, let's say, right? What MP3 actually does is, in order, they want to be 5% higher than the district all the time, but they actually get less per pupil funding. So what they end up doing is a lot of the years you're in MP3, you don't get a year-over-year raise. So you're at, $65,000 for 5 years, and then you bump up to 68,000, and then you're at that number for 5 years, and then you bump up. So that's one component of the answer, Arsenio. The other component of the answer is that Natomas Charter School, until about 4 years ago, actually didn't have principals. We had what we called coordinators. And so the thinking behind that, this kind of goes under Ting's leadership, is Ting and Charlie really saw themselves as the principal. And then you had these administrators that they referred to as coordinators that were kind of like vice principal-ish. So as a result, there was like kind of a different pay range for it. When, especially during the pandemic, the state now treats us like a school district. And there's so many more school district-y things that we had to do. Plus, we now are our own LEA for special education. So it meant we kind of had to create a director team, which then meant that the principals really did have to be principals of the academy. They weren't coordinators of the academy anymore. And so you'll see in a couple slides here, we've been making investments in the principal salary schedule, and we've actually made investments faster than everyone else because we've been navigating that change.
Sure.
But we have some more work to do there.
Okay, and to Jen's point, or question, like, do you see that as a challenge, that band, even though we're working towards boosting that up, have you seen that as a challenge with retention of principals?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and actually I would say we probably have more of a risk around retention of administrators than retention of teachers.
Thanks.
Okay, moving us on to special education. So the special education, the structure of this document is the same. The green column is literally the same. The names of the organizations are literally the same. But what we have here is we have our education specialists. So those are our special education teachers, our speech language pathologists, and then our school psychologists. Similar sort of structures down at the bottom in terms of looking at percentages. We tend to be a little better than average when it comes to education specialists. Like if you look at compared to everyone, we're sort of in the right around average. We're either 2% above to 2% below. When we're compared to only charter schools, we're actually really good. Like we're a good 5% above only charter schools. And then when we look at Natomas specific, that's where we're under a little bit. And then SLPs, similar sort of structure. SLP, the starting SLP is about 8% above average, but then it sort of ends about 6% below average. We're a little stronger, definitely compared to just charter schools, and then kind of similar to just Natomas Unified down at the bottom. And then actually where we're really strongest is school psychologists. And that's really comes from, we were struggling to attract and retain school psychologists, and we kept ending up with contracted school psychologists. And so last year we made some pretty significant investments in that salary schedule, and they're staying, and the people want to come work for us. And this is, school psychologists might be the most difficult to staff position in K-12 education right now. So we've been trying to really retain those. So, similar sort of things, once again, we don't know how much money we're gonna be working with, but we're probably, the ed specialist salaries are driven, they're part of the teacher salary schedule. They just get an additional stipend because they're ed specialists. So if we end up doing like a 2 to 5% on the teacher salary schedule, it would also be a 2 to 5% over here as well. We probably need to do something in the neighborhood of 2 to 3% to stay competitive for counselor. And then school psychologists would probably stay about the same as where it's currently at, since we're doing pretty well on that one. Okay, then any questions on the special education page? Okay, then I'm gonna go to this is our hourly page. And I do wanna call out that this is the most difficult page to try to do an apples to apples comparisons with other organizations. Some organizations have 10 steps on their salary schedule, some have 20, some have 30. We have 20 on our salary schedule, so sometimes it can be a little bit of a tough comparison. But if we look at paraprofessionals, that's kind of the blue one to begin with, you can see that generally, whether you're looking at all schools, charter schools, or the school districts, we're kind of above average across all of those steps. And actually our paraprofessionals at the end tend to do really well than paraprofessionals in other organizations. This is a position where I should say all of these positions that are on this page, this is where we're competing against fast food industry. And remember here in California, that's a $20 minimum wage for fast food workers. So even today, like I made an offer to an employee who was really excited to take it. And this person also had an offer from a fast food thing. And so he was like, can you match this? So making some adjustments on that person's salary, because I don't want to lose a highly qualified individual to a fast food job, right?
Quick
So,
question on that. Are there benefits offered in these fast food jobs?
Oh my gosh, okay.
And they're full-time?
I mean, there's a reason why when you go to Raising Cane's, it's $15 for chicken fingers now. I mean, it's like, fast food isn't cheap anymore. Yeah, or, you know, we rarely go to fast food in our house, but we were on a road trip and we went to a couple McDonald's at Grand I-5, and I realized there were no workers there. It was all AI.
Yeah.
And it was because it's so expensive to like employ people, right? So this is interesting because for these positions, we're comparing ourselves to these organizations. But in many ways, these other organizations are not what's driving our wage increases here. It's non-K-12 education positions that are becoming our direct competition. So all that to say, paraprofessionals were generally doing okay. You know, this might be an area where we don't need to make some significant investments. We're gonna have to make some changes potentially around minimum wage increases and stuff, but generally we're okay here. Campus monitors, this is one where we probably need to make some sort of adjustments. You know, compared to all the organizations, we start out actually pretty low, but we end a little bit higher. But this is a position that will also be affected by us needing to make increases in minimum wage. Administrative assistant, we actually are not so great at the beginning. It gets better as they, you know, go up in years. But this is another position that we're going to need to look at making some investments as well. And then custodian, similar to administrative assistants, you know, we're not necessarily starting out so great, but we're ending pretty good. And this is more of us having 20 steps versus other organizations maybe having 10. But that might be one that we need to look at some investments as well. But one of the things that NEDA is going to be doing is, you know, a minimum wage is projected to go up every year for the next couple of years. And so what we're trying to kind of look at is like, how can we make some investments in this salary schedule that maybe gets us competitive with minimum wage for at least 3 years? And then everyone's steps would kind of go up at the same time.
So on these beginning, mid, and end, what are the year ranges on these?
So this is where this is a tough comparison. For us, this is basically year 1 and year 20, so that's the beginning and the end, right? And then usually in the middle is like around a year 10. But then Ziba has to get creative when it's like an organization has 15 steps, then it's year 1 and year 15 and year 7. So we literally will just look at their document and go beginning, end, and then what's the closest thing in the middle we can possibly find. Right? Yep.
Is there anything particular we do for like career advancement training or like some kind of a track, like, you know, with these type of positions? I know we were having problems or challenges with like credential, and then we're talking about like incentives to provide the funding for credential or provide some kind of academic funds for that rather than just like a straight out promotion, or not a promotion, but increased pay.
Yeah.
Is there something like that we're doing or can do in these positions that we're also retaining people that have the culture, like they're developing the culture of our organization along that pathway?
Yes, so I think the question you're asking is like helping classified people become certificated people. And absolutely, that's actually been one of our best ways of filling our classrooms with highly qualified teachers. So we actually have kind of 3 programs that we're participating in do that. So first, there's something called the Marshall School Residency. And so we actually have 2 resident teachers this year. We basically pay that organization $16,000 for the person to be working with us for a year. They kind of function like a student teacher for the year, and they're receiving a wage from that program. And then we basically, if we decide to keep that person on as a teacher, we pay a finder's fee of $5,000 in the following year. So it's a net $21,000 expense to the organization. There's also Sacramento County Office of Education, so SCOE has their own teacher resident program. And so the way that works is that you have the person working at your school while they're doing their teacher residency for a year as a paraprofessional. So we're paying them on the paraprofessional wages. And then they basically can go into a teaching position in last year. And the last thing that we're looking at piloting is we have an employee who's been with the organization for a long period of time who wants to obtain her teaching credential, and she needs to do student teaching. And so we're working on developing a paid student teaching position for the time period that she needs to do that. So she doesn't have to basically like quit her job to student teach, which those of us that are a little more veteran like myself, that's literally what I had to do when I became a student teacher. And so we're trying to look at like, how can we support, especially employees that we know we have a relationship with and have years of experience and have good relationships with the kids. to make that transition, because how do you explain to someone, hey, we're so excited for you to become a teacher, can you go without pay for the next 6 months? That doesn't work in any way, shape, or form, right? So we are kind of building those programs as they become available to us, but yeah, definitely trying to figure out how to do that. All right, so then the next page, this is executive director. So we look at executive director and chief business officer every year. We actually have some fiduciary responsibilities, look at these two positions every year. So you can see that compared to everyone, our executive director salary is about 21% below average. Compared to just the charter schools, it's about 4 or 5% below average. This is pretty typical for us. That's makes sense with that per pupil spending. If we go to the next one, which is CBO, about 8-9% below average compared to everyone, and about 5% above average compared to just charter schools. And then the last page that we have here is health and welfare benefits. And so health and welfare benefits, this is where we're really looking at what is the organization providing to the employee. Organizations tend to do one of two things. Either they do like where they break it out like employee plus one, employee plus a couple, a family, and they have different rates. That's what we do here at Natomas Charter School. Or they do a composite rate where it's like everyone just gets this $1 amount. If you look down at the averages below, you can see that at least compared to everyone, we're a little higher than average for employee only, but then we tend to be below average for employee plus one and family. The comparisons are a little bit better when we're only looking at charter schools. I do think there is a nuance in this data that's not completely obvious though, until you start going and looking at people's health and welfare benefits packages. So typically the school districts are basing their rates around fully insured plans. So, like an Anthem Blue Cross or a Kaiser type plan. Whereas a lot of the charter schools are basing their rates around high deductible plans. And also a lot of the charter schools are starting to do cash in lieu. The insurance company that we're currently with, Charter Life, actually doesn't allow us to do cash in lieu. And that's one of the things that we are exploring as we're looking at the new broker. There's a trade-off though. Typically, if you offer cash in lieu, then the rates go up for everyone else. So that was actually how we ended up not having cash in lieu, is that it was a way to reduce the rates for everyone by kind of keeping everyone on the plan. But this is another thing that, as we're asking the broker, one, to educate us on, but also to look at some more options so that we can navigate the escalating health insurance costs. Okay, so now this spreadsheet was really looking at the data as it exists today, right? But I do think it's important, especially for those of you that might be new to the board, to look at some historical trends of kind of where we've been and what this looks like. So if we go to the next slide, so what we're looking at here is teacher salary advancement 2019, when I took over as executive director, when we started the compensation study process to today. So it is important to remember that as an organization, we've made a lot of investments in our salary schedules, and it's been like, 2% this year, 3% this year. We did a redesign last year. On top of that, people are getting steps every year too. So even if we did like nothing to our salary schedules for next year, there's a built-in step for everyone, right? And so if we look at these actual wage growth numbers, if we look at an employee, a teacher, we're looking at teachers right here, that started on our first step in the 1920 school year and did the natural advancement of year over year type thing, they would actually be on our new salary schedule. We would call this step A6. That's actually a 35% increase in wages. And so that's a mixture of the steps that they've gotten, but also the increases that we've offered in terms of making investments in our salary schedule. Someone that was middle, they went from 2.5 to B13, that's about a 27% increase. And someone that's high went from what we used to call 4.1 to now C30, and that's about a 28% increase. So, sometimes I think as a board member, as a member of the governance team, you're like, what's only 2%? Or it's like 1.5%. Those do add up cumulatively, and over the last 6 years, they definitely have. And then the bottom table there is looking more at salary schedule step changes. So because we've been doing this for 6 years, we can go back and go, what was the original average of a low step versus a high step? So if we look at this, the first column where it says all, so for all the organizations that we ever have compared ourselves to, that first step, the lowest step on a teacher salary schedule, has actually gone up on average about 21%. And the high step has actually gone up about almost 21%. For Natomas Charter School, the numbers are slightly different. Our bottom step has gone up about 22%, and our top step has gone up about 14%. And that's really, as a governance team, we've intentionally been investing in the front end of our salary schedule, because a lot of the feedback that we were getting from our staff is that it was harder just to become a teacher because, you know, like when I was starting, it was like $47,000 a year. I can't pay rent on that, you know, and so we've been trying to build up that initial step. Yeah.
And if we tried to augment the top step in different ways, longevity bonuses?
That's a good point, yes. So on our new salary schedule, almost everyone, I should say, everyone who's on basically like step 25 and above is also getting a longevity bonus on top of this, which could be anywhere from 2 to 4% depending on how long they've been with the organization.
And that would be in addition to the.
And that's in addition to that,
But that's at step 25, right?
no, I'm trying to remember what I meant. Longevity bonuses start after 10 years. So it depends.
10 years with us.
10 years with Natomas Charter School. So where the longevity bonus doesn't help us is if we are going to bring someone in with a lot of years, but that rarely happens. We typically are bringing in someone with like 10 years or less of experience. And that's actually good because sometimes when you bring in someone with 20, 25 years of experience,
They're way.
they're a little set in their ways, you know, and we find the people that are most successful in our organization, they're usually most successful if they have sort of like 10 years or less of experience when they're coming in.
I'm just curious because, like the 10 years, I feel like at that point, they might be looking for something more.
Don't suggest it.
That's live.
So what you're suggesting is maybe re-examining the longevity bonus and see if it doesn't need to start earlier. Maybe there's 3 parts to it, like a 5 to 10 year, 10 to 20 year, 20 year plus.
I'm with you.
All right, next one. So I did mention, this goes back to Arsenio's question, the principal salary changes. So this one is slightly different in terms of how it's structured. What we're actually looking at is what it was the average principal salary in each of the organizations over those years. And so you can see that on average from the 19-20 school year to the 24-25 school year, for all schools, average principal salary has gone up about 21%. For charter schools specifically, 19%. For Natomas Charter School, about 26, almost 27%. Now, we were also making that transition from coordinator to principal, so that was kind of part of it at the same time. And even just looking at, you know, we're the red line at the bottom, like we still have more work to potentially do here to be competitive. And then the last slide is really looking at classified salary changes from only 3 years, because we haven't been doing classified salaries forever. Do you have a question about principal?
Yeah, not so much a question, but a comment is, yeah, it looks like our average is the highest of 3. We also started significantly lower than the
Yes.
rest, right?
Yeah.
So we have to keep that into.
And we have more work to do.
Yeah.
So looking at classified here, classified, when you look at these tables, so there's one for paraprofessionals, one for administrative assistant, one for campus monitors. You kind of have to look across, then you also have to look down at the same time. So when you're looking at paraprofessionals, you can see on the average salary in 22-23 was $19.77 an hour. Then it went up to $20.98 an hour, then went up to $22.06 an hour. So on average, there was about a 11.5, almost 12% gain, right? That was for all. Natomas Charter School, it was only about a 3% gain over that time. But if you look down at the bottom row, you can see we were starting out significantly higher than everyone else, right? And that was intentional. When we first went on our own for special ed, we were really struggling to find paraprofessionals. And so that was why we went with a higher salary range. Administrative assistant, same sort of thing. Like there's been about 11% growth over the years, or 10.85% for all. It's only been about 3% for us, but we started significantly higher. We started a good 10, 11%. And then the campus monitor, same sort of thing. It's about 11% increase over the 3 years for all versus a 4.25% increase for Natomas Charter School. But we started a little bit higher. So this might be, once again, we were talking about how administrative assistant and campus monitor were 2 salary schedules where we probably needed to make some investments. And you can kind of see looking at that bottom row, it's, we're still ahead, but we're falling behind a little bit. So we need to make some investments there. The other historical trend I'm talking about is medical benefits. So you can go and go to the next slide. So let me kind of explain how health insurance has historically worked at Natomas Charter School. So Anita mentioned in 2014, we made the transition to Charter Life. Before that, we were part of Natomas Unified. So at Natomas Charter School and in most K-12 school districts, insurance is typically a fully funded insurance plan, similar to what state or government workers get. And so at Natomas Charter School, what we have historically done is we've provided a low and a high plan. So the idea is that, a low plan is low cost, but you might have a little bit of higher copays, like it's $20 for the doctor, $10 for prescription, something like that. Whereas the high plan was more expensive, but you would have a lower copay, maybe $5 to visit the doctor, no charge. So we did that for many, many years. And then probably 3, 4, 5 years ago, we added a high deductible plan because especially for people that were trying to do family coverage, it was becoming increasingly expensive for them. So we actually have 2 high deductible plans right now, one that has a $1,500 annual deductible and one that has a $3,000 annual deductible. And when through all the years that Ting and Charlie were in charge of Natomas Charter School, their philosophy was that they would do what they could to fully cover the employee on the low plan. So the idea would be whatever, if you think of Anthem Blue Cross and Kaiser's, that low plan rate, plus whatever the dental was, plus whatever the vision was for that employee only, we try to really match that. And kind of the idea there is that it serves students by making sure that we have a health insurance plan in place, that teachers and staff that work here don't have to worry about going to the doctors themselves. We understand that there might be out-of-pocket amounts, like if they have to insure their children or a spouse or that sort of thing. And I mean, yes, if money was limitless, we'd give everyone the family plan, right? But money's not limitless, right? So we kind of have to pick and choose. So that's kind of how we've tried to sort of like benchmark our rates over time, right? Is we would look at that low rate and we would kind of do some averaging, add it all together, and be like, okay, it's about $800, let's give them $815, and that should kind of cover everyone, right? The problem is how quickly things have gone up. So, we're looking at data only just going back to 2021 here. So not that long of a time, but basically kind of like post-COVID. And you can kind of see when you look at the graphs, like when we were in 2021 and 2022, 2023, there weren't huge increases in this cost. And then bam, 2024 hit us and then 2025 hit us, right? And so compared to where we were in 2021, you can see that employee only rates gone up by 28%, employee plus spouse gone up by 43%. Employee plus child's gone up 23%, 20% for employee plus children, and then employee plus family's gone up by 32%. And I will say, this is actually the thing we hear the most about from our employees. I mean, yes, everyone wants more wages, like, of course, right? But this is the thing that is actually causing people the most pain in terms of what they really verbalize when they talk to us. And that's really largely explained by the next slide, which is really just looking at the out-of-pocket amounts. So that blue line is that employee-only rate, right? So I told you that for many, many years, we were always trying to keep that as close to 0 as possible. So on average, it was like, 1%, then it kind of went up to 4%, and then bam, it's jumped up to almost 18%. And this year it's pushing 23%. And so, whereas the other ones have gone up too, but not necessarily to the same degree. And so this is what we're hearing a lot about from our employees. So if we go to the next slide, one of the things that Anita and I were just trying to sort of like figure out is like, okay, how much money, if we keep the same philosophy that we've always kept, which we don't have to, but let's say we did, like how much would that really cost us? So that table over the left is really looking at the current benefit amounts based on our most recent renewal. So you can see, like, if you look at employee only, we give the employee $825. Their insurance costs they have a net out of pocket of $245, right? So basically the school's paying 77% of the insurance, the employee's paying 23% of the insurance. If you look at the next table over, well, what would that be if we wanted to have 100% coverage? So we wanted to fully cover that employee. It would be $1070, these are monthly amounts, I should say, $1070 a month versus 0 for the employee. So if we look at all of these different rates, and what we're trying to figure out is like, how much would it cost to more or less keep our same structure and go back to fully cover the employee? It is a net $361,000 for the year. So I share that not just with the board, but with any employees that are viewing from home, that like, we always, when we receive $1, or let's say we get net $500,000 that we can work with in terms of salary and benefits this year, that can go towards salary or it can go towards benefits. It can't actually go to both places. And so if we want to say, we're going to go back to this particular benefit structure, fully covering all the employees on that low plan, we can, but if we have $500,000 to work with, it's going to take $361,000 to do that. And so just like to be thoughtful, we have to be kind of thoughtful about that as we're making the changes. So Jen looks like she wants to say something.
Oh, I've always liked to say a lot, you know that, Jill. What's our distribution in terms of employee only versus, just kind of across the board down to employee plus family?
That's the highest percentage that we do employee only.
Employee only is the
Yeah,
highest,
so we
okay.
have.
Most common.
Yeah, most common, I would say the other categories are less than 10 in each of the other categories. Less
So we
than
probably
10
have 50% of our employees in employee only, and then the remaining 50% are kind of spread amongst the other 4 categories.
I think that is, as we're looking at that, that could be valuable information for us because it gives visibility into what's important to our staff and then how we're distributing any benefit that we can find.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I would guess it doesn't surprise me because I would imagine that our staff are 2-earner households and they're probably getting either equal or less rates on their own plan,
yeah.
right? And so, because $1,500, my goodness, right? That's, you can't do that. So, okay. Yeah. Everybody's like, duh. But yeah, okay. Yeah, that would be helpful, thank you.
Yeah, we can definitely bring that as we kind of talk about amounts for next year. I think the other thing too that we definitely want to revisit with the broker is the whole high deductible plan. I know personally I would feel more comfortable with the high deductible plans if we were able to complement it with an HSA, which right now we don't have in place. When we've talked to brokers about it in the past, it's been, a significant expense to the school in terms of fees and stuff. But one of the things that scares me a little bit is I do feel we have a decent number of employees on high deductible plans not prepared to pay their high deductible. And while, that's the individual's, it's their personal financial responsibility, when someone has a significant financial hardship, that affects their work performance, their ability to come to school and stuff. And I do think if we continue to offer high deductible plans, we're gonna probably need to do more educating around what that really means. Because I don't feel like all of our employees who are on those plans fully understand what that potential liability is for them.
Yeah, I think the education is always good. What we talked about too is as our population of staff maybe shifts, if we're more weighted toward early career staff members, the medical needs may be less in that time period.
Right.
And so that's where the high deductible might be a good thing, but I hear you of not making it so they're unprepared.
What I'm hearing from talking to them is they're going to high deductible because of its net cost.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily thinking through like, oh, I'm healthy, because we have a lot of families on the high deductible plan, which at least like when my child was younger, we went to the doctor a lot. And so that's the part that makes me a little bit anxious for them,
And can we explore, because we talked about this too, higher copays?
So that's kind of what we have with the high and the low, but that's part of what they're gonna be looking at with the broker when they're looking at different plans. And maybe there's even a high, medium, and low or something like that.
Yeah, because another common one is adjusting urgent care and hospital deductibles as well too, for savings and stuff. And just to throw out there, because you're looking at numbers and stuff, our average age, would you say it's higher than 30 or our average age of employees on our plans? It's actually 42 is our average age. So it's already on the higher age.
That was actually one of the reasons why we broke away from Natomas Unified, is we were in a higher age pool when we were with the school district. And it did initially save us a little bit of money, caught right up within a year or two, but.
Right. And I think about the urgent care, and you spoke about your family, we had urgent care Sunday in our house. It was always on Sunday that we had to go, so
And that's
be careful with that too.
The Housing Welfare Committee can also help with that education piece and getting the word out and stuff too. Because in looking with our current broker, we've asked for voluntary HSA plans. Just, I'm already contributing to this and that. I want to do an HSA plan on my own. But we weren't able to get vendors to come to us and stuff. So we're really hoping with this new broker that would be an option as well.
And I would imagine with the increased costs overall in health insurance that more accessible HSA plans are gonna become more popular, hopefully.
Yeah.
It's definitely a trend in private industry as well too.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay, go.
That was a question, so if you were.
Yeah. You go first.
So looking back at for the employee only, the two really significant increases over the past 2 years, was that strategic decision to put more to salary and less to health, or was it kind of a confluence of the late information and the skyrocketing, and this is kind of where you were stuck with at that time?
Kind of both. You know, on one hand, we do kind of have a funny structure in the sense that we are able to make changes in our compensation on a fiscal year calendar, whereas our health insurance is on a calendar year. So there's kind of always a 6-month lag, if you will, as a result. The issue that we were really struggling with last year is, you know, we were being told about all these potential state budget cuts. And we were really wanting to make investments in the salary schedule because our comp study showed that was where we needed to do a lot of work, which meant that there wasn't a whole lot of money left on the table to then put into benefits. And we were being told, and you're gonna have deferrals and all these other things going on. So we prioritized putting the money on the salary schedule because from a philosophical standpoint, $1 on the salary schedule is available to everyone. Whereas $1 invested in benefits is really only available if you're gonna take advantage of those benefits, right? And so that was sort of the idea there. I think it wouldn't have been so painful if the rates didn't go up again this year, you know, and that's where it's like, okay, we have to do something here. And at least with our current broker, we're being told, you know, at least 5 to 10% increases over the next foreseeable future. So that's just gonna keep getting worse.
And we are polling our staff in this year's survey about where they want to place those funds.
Yeah, we actually, as part of the survey this year, we're asking some compensation related questions, and one of them is actually asking them to prioritize it. You know, for every $1, where should it go? You know, is it salary schedule? Is it health and welfare benefits? Is it additional retirement? You know, contributions, that sort of thing.
That was actually a question I was gonna ask.
Yeah, it's trying to solicit some
Involved.
feedback there to
That's
kind
good.
of see kind of where people were at. You were asking about the health and welfare insurance. I don't know. Oh, I know. So the other thing I was gonna mention is that also one of the challenges for us as a K-12 employer in Sacramento is when it comes to health and welfare benefits, we're often competing against districts in the state. And as we all know, the state tends to offer really good benefits. And so that is, you know, I think that I do want us to be conscientious about a high deductible plan, not just in the sense of educating people, but like it actually could be a put off in terms of actually bringing people in if they see it as a net cost, because that's not what they're comparing themselves to. They're comparing themselves to what a school district might offer or what the state might offer, which tends to be fully insured plans.
So with a high deductible, we would only have the high deductible or
We probably have multiples.
multiple,
Yeah,
right?
but I'm talking
Okay.
about if we, let's say whatever our monthly rate is that we're going to give employees, if it's based off the high deductible plan,
Yeah, okay,
it might not be enough, is more what I'm saying.
gotcha.
Okay, so going on to the next thing, I'm just kind of summarizing the data. So, you know, trends for the current year, we continue to see receive less funding, which is largely based on student demographics, but some areas of strength, I think, are classified staff, school psychologists, and even counselors to a certain degree. Some areas of focus moving forward would be health and welfare benefits, general education staff, education specialists, speech language pathologists, and admin/principals. We did make some significant investments last year, you know, so last year everyone got at least an annual step, but we also made lots of changes to our certificated salary schedules. We also did an increase in the amount that we were providing on the family side of health and welfare benefits. And then compared, for the teachers compared to this year compared to last year, on average, people got a 7% increase. Some even got more than that, you know, with that transition. And we had that longevity bonus added as well. And then for certificated support staff, so that's like our counselors or school psychologists, they got a 3% increase for everyone except for counselors actually got a 17% increase. So we made a significant investment in counselors last year, also a longevity bonus. And then for administrators, we actually had about a 10% increase for academy administrators, so for principals, and about a 5% increase for central services, and then we built in a longevity bonus as well. So we've done some investments. So the last slide is really just kind of closing out, kind of planning for budget development. So as I mentioned, we don't actually know how our funding is going to change. You know, for next year, we have some initial numbers, but we don't know numbers. And just for the board and anyone watching at home to kind of have some comparison purposes. So that structure that we talked about changing our health and welfare benefits, that could be a $361,000 expense, right? And then the other thing I asked Anita to pull for us is just like, what is the cost of a 1% raise for these different categories of positions? So a 1% raise for certificated teachers and support staff is about $113,000. And 1% increase for hourly staff is about $66,000. And for administrators and supervisory staff is about $34,000. So altogether, a 1% raise for our organization is about $210,000. So just kind of keeping that in mind, let's say as we looking at the budget, there's an extra $1 million on the table that we weren't projecting for, right? Well, then it might be like, okay, $300,000 of it's gonna go to health and welfare benefits, and then this other, $700,000 is gonna go to salary and benefits, but it's gonna be broken up this way. Salary and benefits are a significant portion of our budget. So therefore, if we decide that we want to increase compensation based on the information in this comp study, it does also have an expense to the organization. So in terms of planning for the budget, we're in the midst of reviewing the governor's budget proposal now. And then basically from now till May, we'll be doing a lot of budget development internally. And Anita will be presenting to you guys next month about what the governor shares with us. And then in May, we'll update the budget. In June, we'll do the budget adoption process. And then we'll come back in August and see if there's any revisions that we have to make and move forward. So we'll be bringing back salary and benefits to you guys in probably March to kind of look at some different potential changes. Any other questions?
Yeah, does this include, maybe you said this, I apologize if I missed it, does this include the ancillary increases to other?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and what Jen is talking about is that because we're a STRS and PERS employer, every dollar that we put on the salary schedule actually costs us about $1.25 because that additional 25 cents is going to STRS and PERS contributions. All right, well, thank you guys. My favorite presentation of the year. Big spreadsheets. All right, Ziba. Important time for you.
That's right. Kathy, you are right. So the 700 forms have been distributed. Please get them done prior to April 1st, otherwise I have to tell you.
And she will.
And I will. That's it.
Okay, hearing of the public for items not on the agenda.
Nothing received with me and.
Hearing of the public for items on the agenda.
Nothing received with me.
Executive Director comment?
Happy New Year. Thank you guys, happy New Year. I'm just checking my little list here. I think you talked about almost everything in here. Just FYI that we are getting back into the thick of production season, so keep an eye on your email. The first musical performance at PFA is in early March with the middle school musical, and then we have Hairspray is our big high school musical at the end of March going into the beginning of April. And then also we have our first dance performance. Zach mentioned it earlier, but it's basically at the end of this month on January 31st and February 1st. So come and see a show. Love that. Where's the date? Oh, when is that? Actually, I don't have it then. February 13th. Yeah, vocal cabaret. Forgot about that. Thank you. We have so much going on with that. Keep an eye on your email.
Wait, is that before our next meeting or after?
Right after.
Okay,
The next
so we
meeting is
talk about
February
it.
10th. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Board of Director comments. That counts as one. Good job, Gina. Board of Director comments.
Yeah, this compensation study, very clear. I think for me, really kind of all gelled together this time around, yeah.
Was it helpful to have it in advance, like where you could look at the things in your email? Yeah. We'll do that in the future.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. Future board agenda items.
Don't forget that February you all have a photo shoot. So, and you already have calendar invites for that. Justin will not be present, but he already got his photo taken, so.
Way to overachieve. I was gonna say it wasn't really your time, you kind of already had your.
What time is that, Ziba? You need to be here by 4:30.
You also, remember in February and March, have the extended closed session.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's why you have to be here at 4:30, because actually the meeting is gonna start at 5.
Oh, I see.
February and March for the 90-minute evaluation.
Right?
Don't worry, I'll remind you.
You'll remind us.
Arsenio said he's gonna bring coffee again.
I didn't bring it back over here.
We might need to.
Midway come up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Double cap. All right, if we have nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:05. Thanks, everybody.